You didn't lose your spark. You lost your addiction to chaos. That butterfly feeling? It wasn't always chemistry. Sometimes it was anxiety. That intensity? It wasn't always passion. Sometimes it was unpredictability. And the reason peace started feeling more attractive than passion is simple. Your nervous system matured. There was a time when calm felt boring, when consistency felt flat, when stability felt uninspiring. You wanted the rush, the late night texts, the emotional highs, the magnetic pull, the I can't stop thinking about him energy, the tension, the uncertainty, the spark. But here's what no one told you: your body does not distinguish between excitement and anxiety the way your mind does. A racing heart is a racing heart. Sweaty palms are sweaty palms. Obsessive thinking is obsessive thinking, whether it's romance or survival. If you grew up around inconsistency, your nervous system learned that unpredictability equals love. If affection was intermittent, your body equated longing with connection. If attention came in waves, you associated relief with intimacy. That's not passion, that's conditioning. And conditioning can feel electric because chaos is stimulating. Uncertainty creates dopamine spikes. Hot and cold behavior creates emotional dependency. And dependency feels like intensity. So when you met someone stable, someone steady, someone emotionally regulated, you felt nothing dramatic, no spike, no crash, no emotional roller coaster, just calm. And calm felt unfamiliar, maybe even suspicious. Where's the spark? Why don't I feel obsessed? Why doesn't this feel intense? Because intensity was your baseline. Peace felt foreign, but something shifted. You got tired. Tired of decoding texts. Tired of waiting for consistency. Tired of mistaking anxiety for attraction. Tired of calling emotional volatility chemistry. You started craving something different. Not fireworks, not drama, not magnetic chaos. You started craving safety, conversations without tension, silence without fear, connection without guessing. You started noticing how your body felt, not how intense it was, but how calm it was. And that's when everything changed. Because mature attraction doesn't hijack your nervous system, it regulates it. It doesn't spike your cortisol, it steadies your breathing. It doesn't make you question your worth. It makes you feel chosen. It doesn't keep you guessing. It keeps you grounded. This is the shift women are making. They are redefining chemistry. They are asking a new question. Not, do I feel butterflies? But, do I feel safe? And that question filters differently because peace doesn't scream. It whispers. It doesn't overwhelm you. It allows you to stay yourself. It doesn't feel addictive. It feels sustainable. And when your nervous system matures, addiction stops feeling romantic. It starts feeling exhausting. Let's talk about intensity addiction, because that's what spark culture really fed. Not love, not compatibility, intensity. We were taught that if it doesn't consume you, it isn't real. If it doesn't feel electric, it isn't chemistry. If it doesn't hurt a little, it isn't deep. But intensity is not depth. It's stimulation. And stimulation is easy to confuse with connection. When your nervous system is wired for survival, think about it. Hot and cold behavior creates obsession. Why? Because unpredictability activates reward pathways in the brain. You don't know when the next hit of affection is coming. So when it does, it feels powerful, relieving, intoxicating. That relief gets mislabeled as passion. But relief is not intimacy. It's the absence of stress. Intensity addiction forms when chaos feels familiar. If you grew up needing to earn love, you'll chase it. If you grew up around emotional unpredictability, you'll romanticize it. If you learned that attention must be fought for, you'll equate effort with worth. So when someone is calm, consistent, available, you don't feel urgency. And without urgency, you question the attraction. Because urgency used to mean, this matters. But urgency was just activation. Your nervous system was firing, not because it was safe, but because it was alert. Alert feels alive. Peace feels quiet. And quiet can feel boring if your body is used to noise. This is why so many women in 2026 are unlearning spark culture. They are realizing that butterflies were often warning signals, that obsession was often anxiety, that passion was sometimes projection. We were conditioned to chase the unavailable, to decode mixed signals, to compete for clarity, to call emotional labor romance. We glorified the almost, the tension, the will they won't they dynamic. But that dynamic keeps your nervous system in survival mode, always scanning, always analyzing, always bracing. And your body eventually gets tired. It starts craving something softer, something steadier, something that doesn't require performance. That's when peace becomes attractive, not because you lost your edge, but because you gained awareness. You began noticing how certain connections left you dysregulated. You began noticing how some sparks came with insecurity, how some chemistry came with confusion, how some passion came with emotional withdrawal. And you started asking a more mature question. Does this feel safe in my body? Do I feel grounded around him? Can I relax? Can I be fully myself without managing the energy? That is nervous system maturity. It's when you stop chasing what excites you and start choosing what regulates you. It's when you realize that love should not feel like a roller coaster. It should feel like home, not a house you're trying to earn entry into, but a space where you're already welcomed. Intensity addiction says, if it's calm, it's boring. Maturity says, if it's calm, it's safe. And safe is not dull. Safe allows depth. Safe allows vulnerability. Safe allows growth. You can't build intimacy on adrenaline alone. Adrenaline burns fast. Regulation sustains. So when peace started feeling more attractive than passion, it wasn't because you settled. It was because you healed. You stopped confusing activation with alignment. You stopped calling chaos chemistry. You stopped romanticizing what destabilized you. And that is not boring. That is evolution. Here's where it gets disorienting. When you redefine chemistry, your type changes, not intentionally, naturally. The men who once made your heart race now make you feel tired. The unpredictability that once felt magnetic now feels immature. The emotional distance that once felt mysterious now feels unavailable. And suddenly, you're attracted to steadiness, to consistency, to emotional availability, to a man who texts when he says he will, who doesn't disappear to create tension, who doesn't weaponize silence, who doesn't make you compete for clarity. At first, that shift can feel confusing. You might even question yourself. Why doesn't this feel intense? Why isn't my heart racing? Why does this feel so calm? Because your body isn't in survival mode. There's no threat to scan for, no mixed signals to decode, no hot and cold cycle to endure. You're not waiting for the next emotional spike. You're simply present, and presence feels different when you're used to adrenaline. This is the part no one warns you about. Healing can temporarily feel like boredom, not because it is boring, but because your nervous system is recalibrating. It's adjusting to a new baseline. A baseline where peace is not suspicious, where consistency is not dull, where kindness is not weak. When you stop chasing intensity, you start noticing something deeper. Depth doesn't rush. It unfolds. It builds. It layers. It doesn't overwhelm you in week one. It strengthens over time. But Spark culture trained you to look for instant combustion, for fireworks, for explosive chemistry. We were sold the idea that love should feel like a storm, dramatic, consuming, uncontrollable. But storms are not sustainable. They're temporary and often destructive. Peace doesn't demand your nervous system. It invites your presence. It allows you to stay grounded while still feeling desire. Because here's the truth: passion and peace are not opposites. Chaos and peace are. You can have attraction without anxiety. You can have chemistry without confusion. You can have desire without destabilization. But that requires a new definition. Chemistry is no longer how activated am I? It becomes how safe do I feel opening up? How comfortable am I being seen? How relaxed is my body around him? And when you start asking those questions, your attraction shifts toward men who are emotionally available, men who don't perform mystery, men who don't manipulate attention, men who don't confuse intensity with effort. That shift can shrink your options because not everyone is regulated, not everyone is consistent, not everyone is capable of calm intimacy. But the options that remain are higher quality. You start valuing predictability, not as routine, but as reliability. You start valuing effort, not as grand gestures, but as steady presence. You start valuing communication, not as dramatic confrontations, but as honest dialogue. And here's the beautiful part: when your nervous system is regulated, your intuition sharpens. You no longer confuse mystery with depth. You no longer confuse distance with strength. You no longer confuse passion with volatility. You see clearly, and clarity makes chaotic love less appealing. It's not that you lost your fire. You just stopped feeding it chaos. Now your fire burns steady, controlled, intentional, sustainable. And sustainable love doesn't exhaust you. It supports you. Here's the integration. Peace didn't become attractive because you lowered your standards. It became attractive because you raised your awareness. You stopped asking, "Does this excite me?" and started asking, "Does this regulate me?" That single shift changes everything. Because excitement can be manufactured, tension can be created, mystery can be performed, but regulation cannot be faked for long. A regulated man is consistent when no one is watching. He doesn't need to disappear to feel powerful. He doesn't need to withhold to feel desired. He doesn't need to destabilize you to feel chosen. And the version of you who once mistook chaos for chemistry would have overlooked him, not because he lacked depth, but because your nervous system was still addicted to intensity. Now it isn't. Now you notice different things. You notice how your body feels after spending time together. You notice whether you replay conversations with anxiety or with calm. You notice whether silence feels heavy or peaceful. You notice whether affection feels earned or freely given. That awareness is maturity. It's not that you don't want passion. You just don't want panic attached to it. You don't want obsession disguised as romance. You don't want adrenaline misinterpreted as destiny. You want depth without destabilization. You want desire without dysregulation. You want intimacy without insecurity. And that is not boring. That is evolved. Spark culture told you. If it's calm, it's settling. But healing teaches you. If it's chaotic, It's unsustainable. Peace is not the absence of passion. It's the presence of safety. And safety is what allows real passion to grow. Because when you feel safe, you open. When you feel safe, you soften. When you feel safe, you stay. You don't brace. You don't overthink. You don't perform. You participate. That's the difference. You are no longer trying to survive love. You are building it. And building requires steadiness. If you started craving peace more than intensity, don't question your fire. Honor your growth. Your nervous system is no longer impressed by what destabilizes it. It is drawn to what strengthens it. That is not losing passion. That is redefining chemistry. If this resonated, comment peace over panic. Let this be the moment you stop romanticizing chaos. Share this with the woman who still thinks butterflies are mandatory. And if you're ready for love that feels steady instead of stressful, subscribe to Depth of Us. Because here, we don't glorify the spark. We teach you how to recognize the flame that lasts.